Hello and welcome to the Step Up webinar on the Ecology of Self-Care. I'm Lena Piskernik, Step Up Campaign Assistant, and will be in charge of the technical aspects of the webinar, while Katarina Višnar, Wave Campaign and Media Coordinator, will be presenting on self-care. I would like to thank you for taking the time to be a part of this webinar today. I hope that it will be beneficial to your organization and look forward to the knowledge sharing that will occur today. I'd like to just quickly go over to the agenda of the webinar. I will also go over some housekeeping rules so that we can share information while also keeping it organized. Here's the agenda for today's webinar. The presentation on self-care will take about 30 minutes, after which Kat will take questions and comments from the audience. Going into the technical aspects, as an audience member, you are automatically muted. I will keep the muting on until the end of the presentation, after which you will be able to ask questions during the question and answer part of the webinar. I am not able to see you even if your webcam is on and you are not able to see me. If you cannot see the PowerPoint, then please simply leave the webinar by clicking the X at the top right of your screen. You can join the webinar again by clicking the link in your confirmation email. Just letting you know, the webinar is being recorded. We have a few house rules that should make the webinar enjoyable for everyone. First, have a listen to the presentation. If you have any questions during this time, please feel free to type them into the questions pane. We will then answer your questions at the end of my presentation. During the questions and answers part, I will not be able to unmute everyone at the same time, but I can unmute individual participants. So if you have a question or a comment, then please raise your electronic hand, and then I will invite you to give us your question or commentary. Lastly, we hope that you will enjoy this webinar. We have provided some pictures for you so that you can see the faces behind the disembodied voices. Once again, I'm Lena, and I'm in charge of the technical aspects of the webinar. Now, I will hand over the mic to Kat, who will be telling you more about self-care.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar. Let me start with a story. If you were ever able to watch one of the many videos available of an animal, a mammal being released to freedom after having been confined, or maybe even just observed your own dog having fun on one of your regular walks, where fun for them can be something opposite to what you consider fun, like digging wet soil and getting dirty, there is one common thing that you likely recognized. It is their joy of movement, the joy of their sheer presence in the three-dimensional natural world. This is something they are wired for. And this is also something that we humans are wired for. Those animals on videos might have never ever seen the daylight and the green grass before. But once there, they are quick to sync to that and recognize freedom. This is something written in our genes and on our bodies. This is the ecology of us as living organisms present in a three-dimensional world. I won't go into depth with this interesting topic here, so let's just say that the way most of us live today, sedentary jobs, long working hours, chronic stress, is not the way of life that we are wired for. For thousands of years, what has been defining and shaping us as Homo sapiens has been hunting and food gathering, a lot of movement, constant contact with the nature, and shorter working hours. These working hours might have been rather stressful occasionally, but that stress was acute, not chronic. I don't want to romanticize that long era in human history. Let's just say that today we live and work within different boundaries which do not necessarily suit our primal ecology. But these are our givens, and we need to operate within them the best way possible and also take care of ourselves. Having said that, I want to share with you an observation of an unusual trait which tends to exist in my experience, particularly in the NGO sector. That trait was the idea about the dominance of the intellect over the material self. The intellect was always treated as the king and the queen of any successful performance, while the body was only some kind of a vehicle for the intellect to thrive, well, at least until the body gets beaten down by sickness. Then you need to go into repair, let it be as short as possible, perhaps do some kind of a cleanse, ditch the coffee out of your menu, and keep going full speed. You likely know that this division of mind and body was something René Descartes came up with, and that it is typical of human civilization of the so-called Western world. Outside of it, humans don't draw this line, and I probably don't even have to mention that animals know nothing about this unfortunate division. Therefore, for our ecology and well-being, it is, I believe, crucial to get over this divide and start reflecting our own attitudes towards our sometimes unhappy week-offs. I hope that this webinar will bring you some of that, and I certainly hope to inspire you to try and experiment with something new. That being said, I also need to use a disclaimer and say that I'm by no means an authority in this field. I'm going to share my experience and knowledge, while you should seek to talk to a professional before engaging with anything new that you are uncertain of or have insufficient knowledge about. A little bit about myself. I used to move a lot as a child and also later. It used to be everything from tree climbing to running. However, from today's perspective, I do not consider my nutrition to have been optimal in the past. In my early 20s, I engaged in some foolish experiments with total fasting and improper nutrition, combined with long-distance running and mountaineering. All of that brought along a few episodes of losing weight through losing muscle mass. At that time, I wasn't aware that some of my experiments were plain stupid. There is a price for these experiments. Today, my knee joints are officially older than my biological age. That means they are pretty much worn out, while my body tends to put on weight if I am not deeply careful with my food choices. But I managed to rebuild a solid muscle mass, which I'm proud of, and I'm also protective of it because combined with my resistance training, it helps me manage the issues that I would otherwise have terrible problems with. In this webinar, I'm going to focus on 4 elements which are more or less auxiliary to our main working mission of being there for women who experience violence. But they can add impressively to the quality of our everyday when engaged thoughtfully. These 4 elements will be movement, nutrition, stress management, and work efficiency. In addition to this webinar, Wave Office plans to share a recording of a live lecture on self-care, which is also going to include the questions about supervision, something that we were asked about in the first installment in the self-care series last week. This lecture is taking place next week at our Step Up Training Institute. So, how do you want to live your life? I would say that there is something close to resembling an almost perfect trajectory of the quality of life. It looks like this chart, which you can see I artistically draw. Keep the quality of life as high as possible for as long as possible, and may the decline then be short and fast. You don't want to go the other way. Movement. In the domain of movement, try to move your joints around regularly. Stretch them, but also try to make them stronger in the end range positions. If your work is sedentary, give some special love to your shoulders and your scapula. Maintain the mobility of these with regularly doing slow big circles with each of your arms, and try to initiate the movement in your scapula without rotating the torso and the hips. If possible, try to reach up and hold onto something with both your hands, then let the gravity pull you down, to stretch and open your shoulders and spine. If you're not strong enough, there is no need to actually hang. Your feet may as well stay on the ground. Another area that will likely need your attention if you sit a lot are hips and legs. Can you squat down, as they say, ass to grass, as this woman in the picture, and stay in that position for more than 15 or 20 seconds? If that is impossible or painful, don't do it, but be aware that being able to squat is a sign of healthy hips and joints in that area, so my advice would be to work on the issue slowly and carefully. The deep squat stretches the joints, muscles, and tendons that are neglected while sitting. Try to imagine your arm muscles being pressed down with 10 kilos or more onto something for hours every day. This is exactly what we do to our glute and hamstring muscles. The simplest thing you can do right now is to stand up and try to fully open or straighten your hips while fully squeezing your glute muscles. That's the muscles of your backside. This kind of movement for better mobility can be performed in many ways: walking, cycling, yoga, Pilates, Feldenkrais, Tai Chi, or even dancing, or a combination of any of these. It doesn't have to have a name to be suitable for you. Just remember that the basics of your body maintenance is regularly moving around the joints in every possible direction. The pain should not be present in any of these, but if it is, stop immediately, then try to find out why you feel the pain or discomfort with the help of a professional. Another thing to consider, especially if you're a woman, and I'm not kidding here, is adding resistance training to your movement routine. One of the good things about resistance training is that it can be well combined into a mobility session and that it can be kept really short. I believe that many of you are aware that resistance training builds muscle. In women, this very effect will likely be less visible as a mass and more as a toned muscle. But what you should know is that it also helps strengthen the connective tissues, that is, tendons and ligaments, as well as bones, and that comes via improvement in mineral deposits, since bones tend to get denser when resistance training is regularly incorporated into our routine. Resistance training has also other benefits, and these here are just a few of them. It reduces anxiety. It improves cellular health, for example, in older women. It improves cognitive performance in elderly women. And these are the links that you see that bring you to the research publication about that. So what's there not to like? While walking is fine, long distance slow running is not that beneficial for our muscle mass and bone density. This is especially important for overweight people, since excessive running can impact joint and soft tissue health and then contribute to injuries. However, these long and slow activities may help us boost our immunity and make our cardiovascular system stronger. Since these activities also engage our parasympathetic nervous system, they may help us sleep better and may as well serve as our time to meditate, especially if done in nature. Nutrition. In this domain, there are a few typical mistakes you will want to avoid. Never ever try to go on diet to lose weight when you are stressed, because low caloric intake is a stress in itself. Instead, try to make better food choices. It is worth mentioning that generally a lot of people tend to undereat on protein. Protein sources need to be present in every meal that we eat and would ideally amount for a quarter to a third of our daily caloric intake. Generally, we have animal and plant source protein. The absorption of amino acids from plant sources is very much improved when these are combined with proteins from animal sources. For vegetarians, that would be dairy or eggs in combination with, let's say, peas and beans. A sound nutrition strategy would be to spread your food sources widely and make your food tasty and colorful, an enjoyable experience. Unless you have a good medical reason for it, it is not advisable to exclude whole food groups from your nutrition. Contrary to what we have been told for ages, older people do not need to deprive themselves of protein, since they are particularly in danger of losing good quality body mass, which is the muscles and the bones. I have met people concerned with poisoning themselves with too much protein. It is likely impossible that with normal, colorful, widespread nutrition, one would overeat on protein. Protein is also very salient as a food source, and we will intuitively stop eating before we could even get close to having too much of it. Do not wait until something goes wrong to opt for better food choices. That is something you can start now, right now and today. Try to have 3 to 5 meals spread during the day, approximately at the same time every day. Make sure to include both a quality protein source and a fiber source to each of these meals. Fiber would be vegetables and fruit. We are creatures of habit, and having discipline here can help us diminish stress levels at least a little. Consider getting yourself a slow cooker. They're cheap, and at least in Europe they seem to not be getting as much attention as they would deserve. A slow cooker can help you prepare tasteful one-pot meals without much effort and with virtually no time investment. They use lower temperature and longer time to prepare meals. In practice, what you need to do is put fresh ingredients into the pot, add seasoning and perhaps water, turn it on, go to work and come home later to a finished warm meal. Slow cookers come in various sizes, and a regular 3.5-liter pot can easily get you lunch for a family or for you alone for a few days or more. Supplements are not a magical tool to help you stay healthy. Nothing will help you apart from a regular good food. However, there are a few exceptions that you might find useful. Adding vitamin D3 in winter due to lack of sun exposure, adding omega-3 acids to your food early in the day, or perhaps if you eat a lot of bluefish, that should be sufficient. But if you don't, then maybe you should consider adding omega-3. Before going to bed, magnesium and zinc can be added. Please remember that I'm only speaking from my experience and knowledge, so make sure you inform yourself fully before engaging with anything new. Stress management. There is a simple, immediate tip that you can put into practice today. Take regular short breaks to focus solely on your breathing. Breathe deeply through your nose into your stomach and let your belly expand, as you can see in this picture. Don't breathe into your chest. Exhale through the mouth, giving it about twice as much time as to inhaling. Close your eyes and do nothing else but focus on your breathing. Do this for 3 minutes. Repeat every time you feel overwhelmed or stressed. Meditation can take different forms for different people. Some people like to move when meditating. That is called productive meditation, and for me personally it works much more to the point than plain sitting for meditation. But regardless of the form, don't jump straight into 1 hour of this activity. Start with a short one of max 5 minutes per day. Just make sure it is the same time every day, then stick to it and make it a habit. It would be impossible to address stress management without mentioning the quality of sleep. So make sure your computer and telephone have an app for shutting down the blue light as the night arrives. There are many apps available. Try and see which one works for you. Also available are glasses which block blue light. I've added a few examples to this PowerPoint. They look funny, but apparently they work. Also, be aware that gentle stretching and especially compassionate touching may improve both your sleep and regeneration. And let's go to the 4th point, which is work efficiency. I know that some of you may by this point be like, but when am I supposed to do all of that she's saying? I'll return the ball and ask, do you know how much time you spend online every day? Continuous online presence is one of the domains where we fail easily, so it can be a potentially great area to improve our behaviors. We should try to keep clear boundaries between our work time and our free and family time. Even if you work long hours, longer than expected, do your best to close that folder when going home. Let me tell you an anecdote here. A young man told me a few years ago about a terrible thing that happened to him when he started his long run the other day. His MP3 player ran out of energy. But he added with an obvious sense of pride, he did manage to get his training despite of that terrible fact that he had to do it without music. He didn't know that this heroic part of himself even existed. So yes, it is possible for contemporary humans to survive without being online and distracted the whole time. Putting this joke aside, I know that some people schedule their time off social media or the internet in general. They have like one day off, let's say on Saturdays and Sundays. Today I'm going to give you a different suggestion. Do not schedule your time off. Schedule your time on social media and schedule your time slots for checking your email. Seriously, email may not be the first thing you want to do in the morning or when getting to work. Schedule time slots for what Cal Newport, whose book I highly recommend, and you can see it here on screen, called The Rhythmic Philosophy of Deep Work Scheduling. The easiest way to constantly start deep work sessions is to transform them into a simple, regular habit. Deep work should be completely distraction-free and can only be engaged for 2 or maximum 3 time slots of maximum 19 minutes during a day. After each deep work session, have a long break of an equal amount of time or more. We all have a limited amount of willpower, and at the start we first need to build the stamina the same way we have to build our stamina when running or our strength when we want to build our muscles. Do not take breaks from distraction. Take breaks from focus. When you first engage in a deep work session, expect to be bombarded with a desire to do anything but work deeply. You will want to check once more that Facebook. The key is to resist distraction, even if that means that you will find yourself sitting alone and with no outcome of your work. It will come eventually. Consider developing rituals around all new things you want to turn into habits. They will help you get in and out of your working mindset. These include where you work, so the place of your work and for how long, define that. How you work once you start, how you support your work. It can be, for example, a good cup of coffee, which you want to prepare before going into that deep work session. Develop a strict shutdown ritual. This is something that we often forget, but it is very, very important, as there is a known ability of mind to keep incomplete tasks dominating our attention. So just develop some kind of a ritual where you go through things which you are about to leave on your desk and then switch off and go home. Combine working completely alone with not working alone, which would be sharing your thoughts and outcomes with people you work with. Also, be lazy and schedule boredom. This is a very interesting thing because apparently mind, when it is bored, tends to go into unpredictable directions, and then it can help us also get better results when we get back into a deep work session. Experiment and plan slots of time when you don't allow yourself any kind of distraction. Just be with yourself and be bored. These were my sort of 4 points that I wanted to touch. And while finishing the writing of my text for this webinar, I suddenly became aware of the furry creature fully asleep on the bed. It's my dog, with the one whose happy face I showed you at the very beginning of my talk today. An hour ago, he was deeply engaged with his work of sniffing thoroughly the trail we walked on. And now, after having had his meal, he's asleep, completely relaxed. He knows how to draw the line between his activities. Actually, animals are very good at that. I believe this old wisdom, which is apparently present in nature, can help us draw the lines between what is and what is not important in our daily lives. Instead of constantly expecting the highest possible output of our minds and then getting less than expected because we never actually engage with our work with a deep work approach, we could learn to play with the rhythm and learn to schedule distractions and boredom to help us improve our work efficiency in return. And in return, we get to resolve our stress levels and maybe even have more time to do other things. I'm hoping I shared some useful insights and tips with you today and would now like to invite your questions. Thank you very much for listening. So if you have any questions, then please give us a sign. Raise your arm. We're now looking at the screen and we cannot see any questions. You can also email us any questions that you might have. We will be sending out the presentation. So if you did not manage to catch all the details, we will make sure that you get these. And by all means, you can get back to us anytime in regard to the resources that are used for this talk. I'd like to thank you very much for attending this webinar. This was the last of the 10 webinars we had in plan for the year 2017. And that also gives me an opportunity to wish you all the best for the new year, in which we'll come with less webinars. But, there is a question. Yeah, here's a difficult one. Many of us are working in a context of scarcity, funding human resources. Self-care needs resources. How to combine both? Yes, Alina has just reminded me that this immediate topic, so what do you do since there is psychological pressure on you, this is something that we will address next week at the training institute. This will be done by our manager Stephanie, and then we plan to record her talk and then publish it so that you will be able to see it. My idea was here just to work around the immediate area. Self-care needs resources, but it also needs attention. And I'm hoping that I gave you a few tips which you maybe didn't know existed. Sorry, that's it. We were just trying to check if there's anything left. Nothing is left. Okay. I would like to thank you once again for being with us, and I wish you a great afternoon and greetings from the WAVE office in Vienna. Thank you very much.